Okay, so we are recording. Welcome, everyone. So this is the Analytics That Matter podcast. This is a series of podcasts that will be performed and available for people to listen in on, produced by the Analytics Working Group, which meets as part of MESA's working groups, helping to drive the innovation of the manufacturing industry with IT technologies. It is also being sponsored by RCA Institute. We have a representative here, Larry White, who will talk a little bit about RCA later on. But with that, I will not spare you any more time. We have on this podcast myself, Chris Monchinsky. I'll be moderating and adding some color and pushing the podcast along as far as the questions. And with us also, we have Larry White, as I mentioned, from RCA Institute. We have Alex Cusick from Altavia Consulting, and we also have John Jackie from Dassault Systems. So welcome, everyone. We'll cover one question in the podcast and keep it nice and succinct and stay on topic, I hope. And our question for this podcast, which is given to us through our discussions in the working group, is the collection of more data at the heart of smart manufacturing? And from that, then, how do we create effective and efficient analytics in smart manufacturing's data-rich environment? So with that, I'd like to open up with that question by asking John to give us, I guess, his opening statement and his thoughts on this question.
Well, Chris, thanks. First of all, thank you for having me on the show and working with you and continuing to work with you. One of the things I wanted to say is I realized this week that everything being what it is, we're still, this is still kind of the whole COVID time thing. And I hope everyone out there is doing well and everyone is safe. I'm not sure who or if you know anybody who's had COVID or worse, but I just want to wish everybody well out there. And with the first code, I just realized that this is the 1 year mark since we've been on lockdown, and I stopped traveling and all that other kind of stuff. So I mean, one of the things that I find is I actually kind of miss the airports. I do like travel when I was doing it and just like getting together with people. But I won't miss things like the paper towel and toilet paper shortage or the bottled water shortage, which I never really understood, considering the fact that we've had great water pretty much across the country here in the United States, and never quite understood that, but that's okay. And the other thing is how digitalization and COVID has forced companies into a lot of this space with as you said, what data is in the heart of manufacturing, how we kind of drive that. And with that opening statement, I guess one of the things I want to kind of go towards is the fact that manufacturing has changed as a function of COVID, and it's really it's been more collaborative, it's been more digital, and the virtualization of manufacturing, I think, is really an enabler, just as COVID has driven us to that. I don't know if you guys agree with me on that, and as kind of a kickoff point to data being the heart of smart manufacturing. With that, I'll kick that over to anybody who wants to take that statement. Has COVID changed us or how has COVID changed your perspective on manufacturing and in your day-to-day life?
I mean, I'll take a little bit of a stab at this. As far as has COVID changed how I've looked at manufacturing. I'd say, in a way, it kind of threw me back to a little bit of World War II and that kind of war economy that we had going on. There was a major focus on doing things faster, better, cheaper. To solve a very, very big problem, and we're currently doing that today. So, with this Project Warp Speed, seeing companies like Pfizer and Moderna really churn out these vaccines at just an incredible rate. and the logistics required to handle that. It truly impressive. But going more focused on the point of smart manufacturing and data being its heart, I'd think that data is definitely the heart and the lifeblood that's pumping through these organizations. But your analytics is your brains, right? So we have this idea that with smart manufacturing, we're just going to collect all this data and have data lakes, and all that's really cool. But it, as some of my fellow Power BI users can probably attest, moving data around costs quite a bit of money. So it's not just about having that data and moving it. It's about intelligently using it. So you don't need uh, microsecond updates on a lot of things, but Microsoft would really like it if you did. Um, so that's kind of my 2 cents on that. Is
I guess, if I could just jump in based on the question at hand here. And John, you gave us an interesting use case as a backdrop. If we were to take COVID, and then Alex, you also mentioned the use of or the example of Pfizer and Moderna and how they brought these drugs to market so quickly. Do we see evidence that, I mean, we have a lot of data. You pointed out, Alex, it costs a lot to maintain this data, to move it around, to put it into the right formats. Do we see any evidence that manufacturers are getting smarter at how they are using their data, to the point of the question, to create effective and efficient analytics? Do we see evidence that in the Pfizer or Moderna, or even the Johnson & Johnson, the AstraZeneca use cases that are out there right now, that these folks have used their data to accelerate their ability to deliver these drugs to market, have accelerated the ability to get these drugs approved from a regulatory perspective, et cetera, et cetera?
uh,
This is, oh, Alex,
oh,
you want
go
to
ahead,
take it?
Go
Larry.
ahead, Larry, please.
Go ahead,
Yeah,
Larry.
well, I'm actually not sure about that, but the first question, the collection of more data always bothers me when you say that's at the heart of something, because it's really not about the quantity. It's really about the use, and the thoughtfulness of what you can do with the data. So it's not a goal to create more data. It's a goal to create more useful data that can be used. Now, I think the question becomes is, do you have to create more data before you can use it so that you know what data is out there? And that starts to become a chicken and an egg point of view. My particular specialty is in the financial world, and a lot of what I see is people make the assumption that all the data they need is available, and they haven't put any thought into exactly what data they need or how one might create that data. They just make an assumption that they're going to be able to go into data lakes and databases and they're going to find the data they need. And my guess is that when they do that, they're going to come back with something.
Okay.
I don't know if that something's going to be right because they haven't taken the effort to carefully design the data and the collection of it and the quality of it to be fit for purpose. So I think there is a certain value in more data, but what's more important is the thoughtfulness about what is really useful data based on a company's strategic goals and what they need to achieve in the marketplace.
Well, let me kind of tie back to that. When you said looking for evidence, I don't have a specific use case within the vaccine world, but I do have a specific use case in the ventilator world. When there was a shortage of ventilators, I know that there was information that was being crowdsourced, that was being shared by MIT, and several other organizations, and a number of home users and just regular guys or regular people um, went out and started to do design work on how to create a valve that can then bifurcate a single to get double the use out of a ventilator. That said, it was designed in a weekend, creating with the use of a 3D, somebody else's 3D printer, and then it was simulated virtually with airflows to make sure that it would work. So it's not a matter of having the data, it's a matter of what data are you using, and if you need more, then we can build on that. But in that case, it was crowdsourced. The data that was there was utilized. The 3D, the valve was 3D printed, simulated before it was ever put into test. It was like a 98% sure thing before it ever was built. And then when it went to go, when it went into production, we knew that it was going to work. And I thought that was we being humanity more so than any single company. And I think that was pretty phenomenal.
I think you both brought up interesting points. I mean, I'm sorry, Larry, rather, excuse me, just a moment ago said that it's about the use of that data and understanding how you need to use that data. So you're developing up your analytics models before you just assume, and you're really vetting those out before you assume you have the data. Then that drives the questions of, okay, if this is my analytics model, if this is going to fit for purpose, is going to, I think it was the phrase you used, going to drive this business attribute, understand this business value, et cetera. What kind of data then do I need in order to feed this analytics engine? And that then goes into, well, okay, now how do I find the data, collect it, store it, et cetera? And that maybe streamlines the process to some extent, rather than just having a soup of data to collect. And then John, you made the point is that, if I could paraphrase what you said, is that it's not just the use of the data for the analytics, but it's also the use in time. So, for example, in the example you talked about with the ventilators, I have some kind of components of a digital twin concept going on there, right? I have some data and knowledge, foreknowledge about certain processes like airflows and constraints, et cetera, and the general behavior of how a ventilator should work under certain conditions, with a patient, et cetera. And then I apply that to my technical model, which simulates a particular valve arrangement, a particular airflow arrangement, and then I have results that come out of that. And that's all developed with both historical data and with data that's from an engineering design. So you're merging different sets of data together and generating a set of analytics out of that as well. So there's a little bit of two different angles that we're looking at there. Alex, did you have anything to add on that?
Yeah, actually building off of both those points. And this might be, I think, a really great example of smart manufacturing in the vaccine space was with all the new vaccines that have come out for COVID-19. The most telling thing is that we do not have any traditional vaccines. They are all mRNA vaccines. So that, to me, that tells me two things. The first of which is all these companies did a cost analysis and figured out the mRNA vaccine could be developed faster, it potentially cheaper, or any combination of those two variables. And that's where we get these three different injections. And then, well, actually, I think it was only one thing. Now that I've gone through my thought process, but yeah, I'd just like to point out that, like, I believe it might have been Bayer. Don't quote me on that, but I believe the traditional COVID-19 vaccine that would have been weakened viruses was decided to not be produced because it would cost too much and was not going to be as effective as an mRNA vaccine.
Yeah, I'm actually not sure if the new J&J vaccine might be a more traditionally developed vaccine. I don't think it's based on the mRNA, but you're absolutely right that the first two that came to market the fastest, the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccines, are both based on the mRNA technology. And it's an interesting point, Alex, too, that again, with all this data that we have, this is data that's in the clinical phase, right? It's data that's in the lab. They hadn't really built a lot of mRNA vaccines for this purpose, and weren't 100% sure that it was going to work at scale. But they had enough data that they could analyze it. Again, put together the analytics engine to understand how it would scale and come to the conclusions that you pointed out, Alex, that it could be produced, that the likelihood that it can be produced successfully is very high, high enough to invest the time and effort to do it, that it was going to be able to be produced in a time frame and at a scale that could serve the purpose, get it done within the year, get it out and inoculate a population within a year plus. Those were the constraints they were living within, and they came to these conclusions, and they had to do that with some pretty sophisticated analytics. It would be interesting to do a deep dive into that specific question, I would imagine.
Yeah. Stepping back from this, though, most of the factors that you brought out about why they did what they did weren't, in fact, financial or even cost factors. I think most of the factors had to do with the ability to develop in a timely manner and the ability to produce in a timely manner. So, once again, we don't want to put financial motives too high up the hierarchy here. Real operational things and achievements needed to happen. And the cost structure around something like this, was very much just a constraint that had to be considered. The real goal was to get it done and get it in mass production.
That's a very good point. The old adage, good, fast, cheap, pick two, right? I mean, so if you want it good, which was definitely an important criteria to make it effective, and if you wanted it fast, and that was definitely a primary objective as well, then cost is a secondary concern, especially with the investments that were being made at the time.
And I think the other thing that I'm hearing in all of this is the fact that there is a significant part of creativity that we have to be aware of in how to use that data, how to look at the data. So I could go back to the core of the question: is more data the heart of smart manufacturing? I think more data is how we use that data, though. Can we use it creatively? Do we have everything we need? And if we don't, can we get it? So it's a matter of creativity, it's a matter of availability, and it's a matter of, do we have a knowledge set to be able to utilize it, whether it's for better effective analytics for scalability, or whether it's for creativity to be able to get something like a new vaccine or a new form of a vaccine out faster.
I
So
know
these are
one of the things that concerns me as I see the pace of smart manufacturing occurring, and I read some of the statistics about just the sheer quantity of data and hopefully information that's created, is can other metrics, particularly in my case, I think a lot about financial metrics, can financial information keep pace with that information? The idea of real-time financial information has been talked about for a long time, and frankly, financial information has never quite managed to reach that, primarily because it comes from a regulatory formal financial reporting point of view. That's the way most accounting systems and financial data is structured. And now that we have data being produced and at the speed and the quantity by smart manufacturing, that gap just continues to widen. And in fact, I suspect that, if something doesn't change in the nature of financial information, and the thinking about financial information, that people will be making most of their decisions based on optimization and resource utilization, and quantities out the door and sales information, and the ability to connect cost information about operations is going to continue to diminish.
Interesting. That's an interesting point. Looking forward. So we've spent a little time on this question. Certainly, this is a big question because we could go in a lot of different directions here about how to start an analytics program, how to deal with the volumes of data that we have, and the different sources of that data. To Larry's point, financial data versus operational data. I would like to wrap up this discussion and just ask Larry, Alex, and John for closing thoughts.
Well, I will finish with just a thought, since I kind of left financial data in a impugned and accused position. I will say that there are solutions that are starting to become available when you look at financial information free of the regulatory and financial reporting constraints, and look at financial data as a monetary view of operational data, a reflective view, and you don't hang yourself up on particular concepts. It starts to become possible to match the data more effectively and find new uses for the data within the new robust abilities of smart manufacturing to create data. So I think there's a lot of hope and promise there. I think there's the potential utility for manufacturing as a whole if that's done. So I'll pass it on to someone else.
Oh, great. Well, Larry, I agree. I think finance is going to have to go through some serious changes, because eventually we're all going to just run out of ways to move up market. Uh, someone's gonna have to make the cheap stuff eventually. So and so in terms of that, yeah, I think with what you're doing and with a couple of the other things that are happening right now, I think finance is going in an interesting direction. As far as um, I think we've kind of missed the point of, or well, I missed a little bit on the effective and efficient analytics. So I wanted to touch on that. Uh, I'm gonna say start with. I'm gonna quote. I think what's his name, Simon Sinek, and start with why. Your analytics should be focusing on answering questions that you have. Don't just you know build data models just to build them. Answer real concrete questions, and you'll be in a way better place. Uh, and that's it for me. I guess it's all you, John.
I have to agree with exactly where you were going. Start with why. We have to have the reason that we're here in the first place. And data and smart manufacturing is all about supporting the solution and understanding of a problem through those models. But it's that virtualization of what we're doing from point cloud enablement and the way we've changed the way we're doing business. I think a lot of the way we're doing business has changed forever. And I think that we have to understand that this change is going to continue going forward. So I think you're absolutely right in starting why and understanding that that change is a constant, and it seems to be even faster than it was before.
That's excellent point, John, and Alex as well. I think that that is a thread going all the way back to Larry's earlier discussion about midway through our topic here that that seemed to be pervasive throughout our discussion here this afternoon. that you kind of you want to start with the model. You want to start with the good analytics, baseline, a model that is going to drive and give you the answer to your business problem, and then work backwards from there. You start with the why. Why do we need to do this? How is it going to work then to support that answer of why, and then decide how to get the data to feed this system and make it effective. So with that, I want to thank John, Larry, and Alex for joining us today and giving us some insight into this topic. This has been a presentation and a podcast of Analytics That Matter, which is given to you by the Analytics Working Group at MESA International and also sponsored by the RCA Institute. Hope you found it interesting and entertaining, and hope you join us again for the next podcast. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Chris.